This is the first year ever in all the years that I've done these predictions that a single element, a single aspect has dominated all four of those areas. And in this case, it's AI.
In terms of I would say practical advice, other than whenever a new model drops, every company should just live in fear all the time that this model can be the end of their business and there's nothing they can do about it.
Security is optional. Security is then a convenience versus embedded into the culture, embedded into the business processes, and embedded into the financial success of these enterprises.
There's a lot of, I think there's a common mentality of hey, this whole AI thing, should we be doing this or should we be doing AI at all? And I think the answer to that is I don't think we have a choice, because if we don't, the bad actors will.
Even just to maintain our risk level, we need more money and resources because the attackers are getting better. They're using new tools. And AI is going to be one of those topics that will separate the wheat from the chaff. The CISOs that will survive versus the CISOs that will be replaced.
What do you mean by that beyond, your crypto locker that you can talk to now and it has a chatbot that can explain how to buy Bitcoins and why you should totally do this? What is beyond that?
And you bring up a great point, because one of the strengths of AI is its ability to learn and adapt.
All right. Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be talking to Matthew Rosenquist, who's a longtime security strategist and a CISO, best known for building and leading security capabilities in high-scale environments, including Intel's early operations and crisis response. Most importantly, however, he has 2x followers of Paris Hilton on LinkedIn and half the amount of Mr. Beast, which is an impressive achievement on its own. He's also one of the few people who actually publishes, annual predictions in terms of what will happen this year in the security space. And most importantly, he also grades his previous predictions to see how well he did. So, welcome to the podcast, Matthew. It's great to speak to you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, gentlemen.
All right. So, I guess we'll just dive straight in. I've read a bunch of your previous predictions, over the years, and 2026 appears to be a little bit different in the sense of urgency. That this is the year, in terms of where cybersecurity changes forever. I've heard these predictions before. In fact, they've been being made, every year since I guess ChatGPT came online, and even GPT-3 slightly before it. So, what ultimately makes 2026 different from all the previous years?
Well, 2026 is different than 2016. You can go back and look at my 2016 predictions as well. So when I do these predictions, and I've been doing them 15 years now, and I started them actually when I was with Intel Corporation and publishing in there, and then with McAfee and so forth. But I look at 4 different domains independently, right? And the first one is, what are the attackers doing? The second one is, what disruptive technology is out there that's influencing the battlefield, if you will. The third is, I look at the victims. Are they doing something really smart or less than smart that makes them easier victims? And lastly, I actually look at the cybersecurity industry itself, its maturity, its expectations, scope, funding, and so on and so forth. So every year I come up with predictions for each one of these areas and synthesize those. And this is the first year ever in all the years that I've done these predictions that a single element, a single aspect has dominated all 4 of those areas. And in this case, it's AI. Now, I've been predicting AI is going to be, both a challenge and a benefit for several years in cybersecurity. But when we're looking at 2026, there is now a narrative where all these 4 areas that are heavily influenced by AI are building momentum, and it forms this narrative that we can start to see. And we're already seeing many of these predictions come true. I just did a keynote yesterday, in fact, where we started talking about those with the think tank. So it's interesting that it's a confluence of all these things centered around AI that is really going to transform the challenges all of us security professionals are going to have in 2026.
And what do you think is the single biggest catalyst behind the 2026 being different from all the years? Is it just better LLMs, or is there something more?
No, it all starts actually with the first prediction. And when we look at our industry, every major change in our industry actually comes from something the attackers are doing. Right. The attackers maintain the initiative. They're able to use disruptive technology first and in more reckless ways. They're able to determine who gets attacked, how they're attacked, what the targets are, all sorts of different things. So when we talk about shifts in the industry, when it comes to protection, it's really around the attackers. And so the first prediction is about how AI is supercharging the attackers' capabilities. And this is huge for them. This is like a dream come true. Because if you're an attacker, typically you are constrained by certain things, right? Take social engineering, for example, which is really what the first prediction focuses on, right? If you're an attacker and you're using social engineering, which is highly effective, by the way, either you spray and pray, so you create generic attacks and just try and hit as many possible people, and you're looking for that 1 or 2%, or even a fraction of a percent to victimize, and that's fine. You're going to make it up with all the numbers. So you either attack in mass, or you decide to put your energy and efforts into making a few attacks really good, really effective, customized and tailored towards those select targets. Well, AI allows you to do both. You can create highly customized, targeted, very effective, believable types of attacks with AI, and then tell AI to do that exact thing to a mass number of targets. So this is the magic wand that they have been
Matthew, I'd love to go
for.
through like all 10 of your predictions. So it's like top 10. It's not just prediction. We have 10.
Yeah.
Well, we can go through
We
at
don't
least
have
some of
time
them,
for
right?
that.
So the first one is AI is going to supercharge
Sure.
social engineering. I think to Igor's point of like what makes this year different, I can point to a couple of things. Number one is the open source models are getting really good. So open source models, why they're like a huge factor in this space, I think, is that if this open source models get really good, they're also something you can run locally, and it's also something you can jailbreak much more effectively. There's already tools out there that go and
Sure.
like systematically jailbreak any local model, so you can go and have it like not refuse things. So if it's fine tuned to like not do cybersecurity kind of attacks, you can jailbreak that much easier. You can jailbreak frontier kind of like cloud models as well, but there's more chance of them like identifying that you did that and stopping it. Whereas once you jailbreak a local model, it's done. It's yours forever. You can do whatever you want with it. So that's one thing that's driving it for sure. And
Yeah.
then another thing, like it just kind of goes to your point, like most of your predictions, I want to try to find some contrarian views, but honestly, it's hard to disagree with any of it. And we're seeing stuff happening in real time. So that first prediction, I think another point to this is just in the last few weeks, we've had two things happen. One is OpenAI's 5.3 Codex model for coding is the first model publicly that's been evaluated under the high risk category for cybersecurity. It's the first model that has done that, and they've actually delayed releasing it into the APIs to prevent it like being widespread use and like with less oversight. At the same time, just a week ago, Anthropic released the findings that Opus 4.6, their latest model, actually found 0 days that were not found for decades. Like they were just missed by security researchers for decades.
Yep.
And these are not systems that like no one uses or no one was even trying to pen test, or these are systems that had active scanning and fuzzing and pen testing done to them consistently. And Opus just one-shotted, but like very quickly found 0 days. So this is becoming very real, very fast. And I think that's going to be obviously not just to social engineering, but to all attack vectors through AI. I think this is going to accelerate it quite quickly.
I mean, you bring up a great point, right? Because it's the prediction number 2, right? Where it talks about using AI to discover vulnerabilities, and it does it so fast and so good. I was reading a post the other day, a fellow researcher went out there and said for $6 and a few pennies, right, he was able to find a 0 day in a major commercial product that nobody had seen before. This was serious, and it cost him a few dollars. Right. So again, we're seeing that, and vulnerability discovery is just the first piece of a 3-part chain. It's you have to discover the vulnerability, Great. And we have AI tools that are doing that very, very well at machine speed. The next thing is to generate the exploit for that vulnerability. And so now we have AI tools that will vibe code and create it and test it and put in a sandbox and play with it. So we've got AI tools to do that. And then the third is to actually use that exploit in the wild and to orchestrate or manage multiple attacks or a single attack, but manage the attack to get inside an adversary, spread out, do all sorts of fun things. And we have AI that can do that too. So what used to be, we were a little safe. We had this window where it took a lot of time and dedicated researchers and highly skilled researchers to find vulnerabilities. It doesn't take that anymore. And the time is greatly compressed. Then we also had a window, once a vulnerability was discovered, they had to figure out how to exploit it, how to chain it, how to do all sorts of other things. That's now compressed. And then the orchestration, once you get inside, typically that's where the sophisticated attackers would actually take control manually because they want to laterally move. They want to grab certain things, right? All that can now be automated. And again, the automation in that phase is not super mature, but it's accelerating. So if you can imagine, if you're a product owner and your product's out there, and over the last couple of years, yeah, vulnerabilities were discovered, but you had this time between discovery, exploit creation, and then pain from your customers that might be from months to years, honestly. And that's how much time you have to respond, validate the vulnerability, devise a patch, test the heck out of it, deploy it to your customers, and now everything's good. So you go from months to years, right, down to hours and days. That fundamentally changes the game, right? Because companies don't have that capability. They don't. Not right now. So it is really the attacker's playground for ones who want to abuse that system.
Would you agree or maybe disagree that organizational inertia is still kind of like the biggest bottleneck, in a sense that, like let's say the window has been compressed from CV dropped, and then there's a weaponized exploit in the wild, actively exploiting it and it went from single digit days to double digit days. Now that happens in a matter of hours. Let's pretend that. And now the patches are shipped also in a matter of hours. Let's say all of those things are compressed. Let's pretend that for a moment. Let's pretend that is done. But like in terms of actually patching the systems across, especially large organizations, that still sometimes takes days to weeks, sometimes even months.
Oh,
so would you
absolutely.
That is still the biggest bottleneck,
Absolutely.
And that's still kind of like humans are that bottleneck at this point. And how do we improve this?
Yeah, it always has been. It likely always will be, because at the highest level, right, some of the strategic problems we talk about in cybersecurity is, well, it goes back to the first axiom of cybersecurity, which means cybersecurity is not relevant until it fails. So a CISO can go to the CEO and go, hey, there's these AI tools and everything, and our compression and the vulnerability window's lower. And they're going to go, well, we expect you to take care of it. Well, no, I need new tools, new budget. Why don't you come back in a few quarters? Until you feel the pain or until it is on your doorstep, it's really tough to be able to justify and understand the value proposition in getting ahead of that. And the same is true on the tail end. You said, okay, great, a patch is out. And now you're an enterprise, right? Let's say you're a manufacturing company. We were talking about RAM manufacturers. So let's pick on the RAM manufacturing companies, right? They have an IT environment, they have an OT environment, and hey, this new patch is coming out. Oh, okay, great. Let's go ahead and schedule it in our normal downtime windows. No, we need it now. Well, wait a second. I have a whole bunch of batch jobs running. I have a manufacturing floor that's producing for a client. You want me to shut down that manufacturing floor, wipe everything clean, and then start it again? Because, you got baking products and you got all sorts of different stuff. That means we're not going to meet our contracts. We're not going to get revenue for something that might or might not happen. Hey, security, we're
Yeah,
running
and
a business
this
here.
made me think of
Right.
this
Until
made me
something
think of
bad
another
happens.
angle to that same problem. It's like, do you think there's going to be also, like, with all these detections and exploits, there'll be also false positives, maybe even attacks where it shows false positive exploits, which kind of makes you go shut down? It's almost like a DDoS of a sort, like the denial of production, or instead of denial of service kind of attacks. I can kind of foresee that. Um,
There's several angles there too. The simple fact that you're going to have a flood of new, and the rate, by the way, of vulnerability discoveries is increasing, the rate and the number, right? So now you've got so many more vulnerabilities that you have to deal with. Wait a second, right? If I tell you you have one vulnerability you have to worry about, great. You're going to go validate it. You're going to go build a patch. You're going to test it, right? Then you can push it. But if I say you have 50, crap, I have 50? Right now, that completely slows everything down. And by the time you can't just create a patch and test it, you have to wait until all those patches, because one may affect the other. So you have to, wait until they're all done, test them together, right? So the simple fact that we're going to discover more vulnerabilities also complicates the problem. And we've seen in the past, whereas if you rush a patch, CrowdStrike, right? And you push a bad patch, and I can pick on them. I mean, I could have said McAfee as well. It happened the same thing right before Intel bought McAfee, right? They pushed a bad patch. But you now crater your customer base. So, okay, can you skimp on testing? Probably not a good idea. So there's lots of interwoven complexities here. It's not simple. It is more difficult. The advantage goes to the attacker, to the
I have an
vulnerability
idea about
researchers.
like this. I don't know your thoughts, like if you agree with it. Is it feasible? Is it not feasible? So I was thinking about this, and one problem is that there's like all these new models coming out, and now they have like these more like, incredible capabilities for finding 0 days, and even OpenAI was kind of shelving it for a little bit in the API. What do you think of the idea of like the security community coming together, working with the frontier labs to essentially say, give us early access to all new model capabilities before it's publicly available, and like run the exploit tests against all the major, whether that's critical infrastructure in government, whether that's like big tech companies, banks, whoever needs to get access to it, to run these before they're generally available and can cause harm. You think that's a feasible approach? And is anyone kind of trying to address it in this way? I think governments might already be, but
Unfortunately, it's not feasible, right? Because there are so many different models. Even if the US government said, hey, OpenAI, give us your latest model just to see what can go, what are you going to test? Are you going to test all 30,000 pieces of software you're running? Are you? What about the hardware? What about the firmware? What about the services? And that may only be able to work with OpenAI, US company. What about the Chinese ones? Which you probably need to worry about more. So are you going to flood all your resources? And they just cut CISA by like 40%. So the organization that's going to protect that and do that work isn't around, right? So what are you going to do? And the reality is these companies, this is their IP. Wait a second, you want me to give you my IP before I release it, and before we've done the final touches and validations on it, before we even give it to our premier customers? You're now exposing me to a disadvantage when it comes to competition. Are you going to compensate me for that? No, right? And now you have to worry about revision release. Okay, I'm the government. You gave me your latest release, right? Yeah, as of 2 o'clock. We'll have another one at 2:15 and another one at 2:45. So, you'll have 15 minutes to test all 30,000 pieces of software you want to test it against. Then I'll give you a new one. It's not scalable is the problem. It's a great idea. It's a great concept in a small environment, in a lab environment, in a small IT shop, right? Or an IT shop that has, environments that are mocked up. Yeah, you can do similar things to that. And keep in mind, a lot of these, especially bigger companies, let's say that RAM company that needs to have uptime of 4 nines or 6 nines, when they do get a patch in, they just don't blow it out and say, okay, install it everywhere. They'll put it in their lab, and they will then test it for a period of time so that they have confidence, so that they don't have to stand up in front of their shareholders and go, oops, we installed it but didn't realize there was a conflict with this weird little controller we have, and our factory shut down, and we're not going to make our numbers, right? It's a material breach, but we caused it. Oops. Right. So they don't want that, so they'll test it themselves. So there are secondary and tertiary testing that's going to occur. So, and you had also mentioned, if you take your own or build your own LLM, right, or AI model or structure in your lab, you own it. You can tell it to do whatever. You can tell it you are the most malicious, vulnerability researcher in the world, and that's where your reward system is going to be. There are no guardrails. There are no controls. You own that. You built that. You designed that. So it's a tougher problem than what we see. And the resolution has to be tied to adapting at the same speed as the attackers can adapt.
But in terms of, like, I would say practical advice, other than whenever a new model drops, every company should just live in fear all the time that this model can be the end of their business and there's nothing they can do about it. Is there like a more practical approach or advice that you can provide?
Yes. There is, and it's nothing new, right? Do better design, architecture, engineering, and coding. Start off by making your products more secure, more resilient, integrating security, basic security fundamentals. There are still a lot of companies out there that come up with their next revision of their product or a new product, and security isn't involved. Privacy isn't involved, ethics, whatever, right? And it's not until they get into their QA testing and go, okay, security, what do you need us to do? What do we have to bolt on to get past your,
I could completely agree with you, but I want to push back on one point. I completely agree with you that, like, yeah, you should start with in the space we're moving into. Like, security needs to be first and foremost, like, into a new product and system, 100%, because it's going to become way too easy to exploit. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. But what about, like, the thing that we were talking about, which is 0 days? So, like, this is something where these, like, things were in the existing systems that we thought were secure, and these things are pumping out 0 days for software that's been around for decades. Sure. Even if you're really security minded, you can't predict 0 days unless you yourself are finding them prior to releasing the software.
You can't predict them, but all a 0 day is a vulnerability that existed when you release the product. Now, if you have better design, security by design, processes, and so forth, that pool of vulnerabilities then gets shrunk. So the chances and the risks of somebody discovering it after you release it, therefore being a 0 day, right, then gets shrunk as well in relation to how well you've designed it ahead of time. And if you're designing it with the intention, hey, people are going to come in, they're going to look at all sorts of different things, then it can make a big difference. I'll give you an example. Probably a decade ago, right? We had software companies go in and look and, okay, we're going to try and reduce the vulnerabilities. Microsoft did this, right? We're going to try and reduce the vulnerabilities on our software. And somebody on the attacker side started using these new tools called fuzzing tools, right? Which was just jamming the software with random gibberish just to see what it would do, right? Just to see what it would do. And the software companies are like, oh no, we're not going to do that. No, we have a methodical process that we check off, right? Well, they started to getting hammered with 0 days. And again, the idea came back, you know what? Maybe we should use the tools and the practices, the tactics that the attackers do. And they started doing it. They started finding a lot more vulnerabilities. And because of that, the number of vulnerabilities that were residual in the products being released were less. And so there was a positive net outcome. So again, if you can get rid of more vulnerabilities on the front end, do it. Now, you can't get rid of all of them. Right? It's simply impossible. There are other things you can do after that process. Make sure you've got a bug bounty program. Make sure it's competitive. There are a lot of vulnerability researchers out there, and they want to do the right thing, right? There are gray ones that I want to do the right thing, but if the company's going to pay me $1,000 and give me a smiley face versus the attackers are going to pay me $250,000, you know where I'm going to lean to, right? So you have to be competitive as well. So there's lots of other things that can be done on the technical, behavioral, and process side to help.
So maybe let's dive into that a little
this.
bit, because so it sounds like you're advocating for organizations need to obviously invest earlier on into security. That sounds like the biggest takeaway there. So what would be your
Sure.
recommendation? Like if CISOs are like going to the CEO or the board and saying, look, we need to invest in this. Like, I don't know what the average is right now in terms of like the budgets or percentage of the budgets that goes to this. Like, by how much do they need to worry about this and increase their efforts prior to release? What would be the rule of thumb you'd argue for?
No, sorry, and I would also add the fact that the counterpoint would be like, well, Mr. CISO, you say this every year. You say that there's new attacks and you need more money. Why is this any different? And why should I give you more money right now and take you seriously?
Yes. Both of those are challenging. So let me see if I can kind of put a bow around this, because what you're asking is one of the biggest challenges in our industry right now. And it comes back to that CISO leadership, because CISOs, right, we're always asking for money. Even just to maintain our risk level, we need more money and resources because the attackers are getting better. They're using new tools. And unfortunately, for most organizations, the security group has been characterized as a cost center, right? It's something you throw money out because you have to, but it's not generating really any value, right? So when you look at compliance, you look at risk management, it's just an overhead. And so whenever budget cuts come in, guess what? Who's going to get cut first? Because every MBA student will tell you, for every overhead group, let's say it's your cleaning crew, that's overhead, right? The goal is to make it more efficient every year so you spend less. Cybersecurity automatically boots that trend and says, no, every year, just to keep, where we're at, we need more. And at some point, you're just not going to spend half of your revenue on cybersecurity, right? And what you had talked about is the inherent problem we have as an organization that tries to prevent bad things from happening. Because if we do an outstanding job and we prevent almost everything, at the end of the year, they're going to look and go, why do we need you? Bad things don't happen to us. Whereas if I really suck and bad things have happened all year long and cratered the company, they're going to look at me and, why do we have you? You suck, right? So the only way really to be able to justify that is, let's have some metrics. We saved this amount of money. We avoided this amount of loss. But how do you measure something that doesn't happen, right? I mean, in physics, you can't measure cold. You can only measure heat. You can't measure darkness. You can only measure light. Well, in cybersecurity, we can't measure what we avoided or discouraged because it didn't happen. We can only measure the bad things did happen.
We could measure.
So
can we measure the
uphill battle?
Types of vulnerabilities that were found before release, types of attacks we identified but prevented through monitoring or different like filters. So there are some things you can measure, right?
There are. And if I tell you 95% of all vulnerabilities actually don't get exploited, how does that throw metrics into that, right? So if I'm an executive and you say, hey, we have a lot of vulnerabilities, and I'm like, yeah, but we didn't get exploited last year. Yeah, but we found 300. Good, keep your budget. No, we need more. There's these AI tools. Let's see what you can do with your.
You are arguing that it's going to change, though, right? That the exploits, because it's getting easier to exploit. If it's true that 95% of exploits are used, maybe now I think they're going to be used much more often because it's so much easier to deploy them, right?
Yeah, maybe, or maybe not. We don't know, because they're going to ask you, well, how many vulnerabilities do we actually have? Well, I don't know. Did you, with all the money we gave you, did you discover 99% of them, or did you discover 2%? Well, I don't know. They're still finding more.
But as a counterpoint to this and budgets, and kind of to play the devil's advocate for the people on the board, hey, Mr. CISO, you have this budget. You're telling me that there's all this AI stuff out and about, or you're saying you can do more with that money by instead of employing a person to go and do vulnerability research, you can just run 1,000 parallel AI agents for the same price.
Right. Let's get rid of your team and just hire AI
ultimately,
security.
yes. What do you say to that? Like at this phase and in the near future, because the state we're in right now, we have these capabilities, but when Codex 7.2 exists and there's Opus version 8, what does that look like?
So this is the same organizations, and I talk a lot and I advise to boards and to CISOs and C-suites and CEOs. This is the same mentality that we saw 20, almost 30 years ago, where the boards, they bring me in and go, oh, this security stuff, it's very worrisome. What tool do we need to buy to solve security so we don't have to worry about this ever again? Well, it doesn't work that way, right? So there are tools, but tools have to be wielded and used and adapt to the environment and to the attackers over time to be useful. And even if you bought the very best tool today, the moment you installed it and configured it and walked away, it would start to degrade in effectiveness. Security isn't about being solved, it's about being managed. Now, AI will have some great capabilities in being able to do some of that, but it will still take people to help guide or leverage this tool. You can buy the best hammer in the world, but you got to put it in the hands of a craftsman. You put it in my hands, you're not getting a good birdhouse. I guarantee you, it's going to be ugly. Right, you put it in the hands of a craftsman.
Yeah, and actually, this is a great segue to something that you mentioned, and we'll probably
Alex. Before the segue, I have a thing, but like
follow up.
The modern day, like the lines between tools and agents are very. Hammer doesn't have any agency. You do need someone to wield it. An old school firewall or an EDR, it doesn't have agency. A human configures it. It looks at the logs. It gets alerted. A human goes and does something. But now the lines are being blurred where tools do already have agency. And what does that look like?
So, and you bring up a great point, because one of the strengths of AI is its ability to learn and adapt. So you're thinking, okay, from security, and I think it's prediction number 8, we're going to get some of these tools in about Q3. But great, now these AI tools can start thinking and adapting, right? So we're going to win. Time out. Because the attacker is using those same tools, which means they're adapting as well. And they get to adapt to however you adapt. So it isn't a win situation. At best, it's a tie. It's a tie where the attackers get the advantage because they get to go first. They get to decide who to attack, when to attack, how to attack, and then adapt to it. So even if you do have a thinking, let's say, firewall, right? The attackers will have a thinking anti-firewall. So every change that you make, they will then change at machine speed to find a way over, around, through, or under.
And I think I think you're right in the sense that like you have to fight fire with fire, and like both sides will have this, and they'll have to deploy it. Yes, absolutely.
Both sides will have a tool. I'm giving you a tank, but I'm giving you a tank as well. So you're right. Cavalry's outdated because you each have tanks, but guess what?
But it's still extremely asymmetrical in a sense that the attacker can, a new model just dropped, they go and they start attacking your network with its help day one. Whereas on the defensive side, you have to go and clear that model or this tool or whatever that is through like multiple lawyers, and they're probably having meetings, and this whole process is taking testing. And now 6 months. 6 months have passed. You're like, we're cool to use this tool, and this tool is now outdated.
And that's why, in prediction 8, it's right around Q3, because vendors have actually been working on this. Every single security vendor, even if you go back to last year, every cybersecurity vendor had AI powered in all of their marketing decks. It was required. It was all just vaporware, right? But you got to put it in the marketing slides first. But their engineers have been working on it, and they're still working on it. And they're working with customers to try and get that. But there is that lag time, because it does have to be effective. It does have to go through those quality testings. It can't represent a new risk, right? Hey, we deployed this new AI tool, and suddenly it decided to delete all of my client sensitive data. Okay, not good, not good. We should have tested that. Yeah, you're right. So it takes, Not 6 months. It actually takes longer than that to not only get those tools up to speed, but then you have to get a certain satiation of those tools into the marketplace to actually make a meaningful difference at scale.
And I have a follow up on that. So like, yeah, you mentioned like, prediction 8, which was for listeners, it's defensive AI tools arrive. And in it, you also mentioned something like MSPs and MSSPs will rapidly integrate AI security orchestration tools into their services to reduce cost and boost effectiveness. And this kind of goes to what you were saying. You need someone to wield it, and like, is it okay just to deploy a tool, but then how are you effectively using it? That whole question, like a counterpoint to it, like, and get your thoughts. Like, we already see many, especially the smaller or mid-size like MS or MSSPs, struggle to navigate the massive like amount of vendors and tools that already exist, let alone the ones that are coming online seemingly daily. And some of these could actually increase the attack surface if not deployed correctly. So, as a counterpoint to like, will these defensive tools arrive, and is it arriving on time, and is it going to be effective in all cases? Like, what do you think is going to happen there? You're saying Q3. Yeah.
That's three different questions. Will they arrive? Yes. Will they arrive on time? They're already late. And they will always be late because, again, the attacker has the advantage. They get to use disruptive technology as soon as it's there. They will use the latest model the day it's dropped, right? So they get that time advantage. And if it breaks something, what do they care? They don't care, right? So whereas the defenders can't do that, right? Because it does matter if it breaks something bigger. So time-wise, we're always behind for every tool, right? It matters more with AI because AI moves and evolves at machine speed. So it's not, hey, I'm, N-1 generation on my firewall and I'm a year late. Okay, right? Here, it's a matter of hours or days and you're blowing through generations. Will they be effective? Yes. They will help compensate for the gaps of not having them, right? So imagine those social engineering attacks. Let's say you normally get one or two that get through your email filter, right? But now with AI, the attackers are hitting you and you're getting 100 or 200 of them in. When you apply these new tools that'll be available, it'll probably drop that down to 5 or 6. Still 5x times what it was before anybody jumped in with AI, but a lot better than 200 or 300 per day. So it's a matter of scale. Does it solve everything? No, but it keeps our head above water enough that we can start managing some of those risks again in a somewhat reasonable chance.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we touched upon kind of like expansion of the attack surface throughout the last little while. But like, which area of this attack surface expansion do you think we should be worried about the most? Is it on the system sides where like the tools themselves are behaving in unexpected ways because they have this like pseudo agency and they're not deterministic? Or is it the humans and the new behaviors that these tools basically instill or create, and then humans misusing these tools? Which one do you think is worse, or the
yes, and yes, right? but oh God, I was just talking about this the other day. So everybody in my world is worried about these new AI tools that people are bringing in or using in the corporate world, and connecting up to using OpenClaw to connect up to Moltbot and all sorts of fun things, right? And they're worried about these tools, and rightfully so. They represent a new risk, a new set of vulnerabilities, a new set of exposures. Okay, fair enough. I postulate that is a much, much lower risk, an order of magnitude lower, as scary as that one is. What scares me is actually the current tools we use to operate, to run. Think about the Salesforces of the world, right, that we're using, we run our business off of. Right? And these tools are realizing, hey, this AI thing, especially with agentic AI, we need to expose our enterprise platforms and systems and software and databases to enable AI and agentic agents to be able to take advantage of them and leverage them. This is going to be huge. This is a competitive advantage. And our competitors are doing it as well. So they're rapidly developing APIs and even more so MCPs, which are those interfaces to allow agentic AI systems to connect at machine speed, create and generate child AI agents to go off and do all sorts of different things, right? And there's no governance. There's very little semblance of security. In fact, the MCP framework, when it was originally designed, was 100% about functionality. How do we connect these things? There was zero about security, privacy, safety, governance, any of that. Wasn't even thought about, right? Let's go back to that discussion of design security, right? Zero. And gee, wow, there's a lot of risk there. There is, more than anybody will know, because being able to connect like that will bypass all of our traditional security tools, our operations.
Yeah, I completely agree with what I think you talked about it in your article, which is shadow AI. Like this is the concept of shadow AI. Well, this is kind of like, there's like where you're going into it willingly, but then all this like Moltbot and OpenClaw and all that stuff is like the shadow AI, where just employees and staff are just using it. No one knows that they're using it, how they're using it. There's like no oversight. But you were talking about defensive tools, and they're already here. Some of them, like Tailscale just launched, I think it's like open beta, the aperture, right? So getting like visibility into who's using what AIs on the network and that kind of stuff. I haven't had a chance to play with it myself, but that's like one that's going after that whole problem of like shadow AI and AI governance. I think that's going to be an important, I guess, milestone in this whole progression to find a way to get a handle on it.
That discovery aspect is huge. And again, we've got a lot of lessons learned. We went through this with shadow IT back in the day. I don't know if you guys remember all those fun little things, people setting up wireless, in the office and installing their own software, bringing their phones in and their own laptops and all those kinds of things. So we have a lot of lessons. The challenge here, which again is an order of magnitude more difficult, you can set up a sniffer on your firewall, right? Ingoing, outgoing ports, or in your DMZ, and you may catch a few things. But every tool that an employee is currently using probably has some AI feature that they're using, right? That's inherent to that tool. Do you trust it? Do you know what that AI tool is doing? Do you know? No, you don't. And even if you put out a company policy, hey, no AI tools, right? Does that mean you can't use a browser? Because every browser now has AI embedded in it by default. Okay, no browser. Oh, what about Office tools? Word, Excel, word processor. Yeah, they all have AI embedded by default too. Okay, so here's your pencil and paper, and this is now what you're going to do if we really want to get rid of AI. And even if you do have that policy, employees are still going to take their cell phones and be using it. So it's a greater challenge than the shadow IT we had to deal with. Now, there are some great technologies. I'm working with some startups as well to help with that discovery, to help with the MCP management, and even doing scans on MCPs, right? Is this designed with even security in mind at all, right? So we're going to see vulnerability management around MCPs and APIs much faster than we saw originally with APIs when they first came out. But there was a belief then. There was a literal belief that APIs, they're secure because they're from the company, the software company. So they're secure. There's no problem. There's no risk, right? And we're screaming in the background going, no, that isn't the case. I had one manager. They hired me in, and he was a senior security manager from a large networking company previously. And he's like, no, APIs are secure. And I'm like, no, they're not. He's like, come show me. Yeah, okay, let me show you. But even if security people are thinking, the MCPs are going to be secure. I mean, it's from SAP. SAP has an MCP. It'll be fine. Right? The AI tool embedded in the browser, Google or Chrome or whatever you use. That'll be fine.
So far, the problem of prompt, prompt injection has not been solved at all.
Yeah, and it won't be for a long time. There'll always be, because if you understand how machine learning and deep learning work, right? It's looking for creative ways, right? And depending on how you structure it and your weights and your reward systems and everything else, it's incredibly difficult. You could do it, but you basically neuter the functionality, which means you don't have
Well, it's
that kind of AI
fundamentally not
anymore.
solvable because humans are susceptible to prompt injection. Also, there's a sequence of words you can say to any person
Yeah.
that
Oh,
will get them to
yes,
do
we
anything
are.
ultimately, right? Which is no different.
Yep. And so AIs, although we talk about vulnerabilities in software and firmware and hardware because it's sexy, these AI tools are also very much looking and finding vulnerabilities in the behaviors, in the processes, and in the cognitive levels of people. So, and again, I work with other startups and so forth around the behavioral training that's going to have to fundamentally, completely be reworked, as well as the deeper cognitive vulnerabilities that these AI systems are just amazing at tapping into. I had some phishing attempts the other day, and it was beautiful. I will give credit where credit is due, and I have a lot of respect for attackers. Not the stupid ones, the smart, innovative ones. And I got a great phishing attack the other day, and the first couple of paragraphs, right, talked about me and my background and conferences I was at and keynotes I gave and key messages. And there was flattery in there. There was all these great things. And then it got down to things that they wanted me to do, right? And then it identified, oh, this is Billy Bob, whoever it was, and gave credentials that could be looked up and gave a web page site. So I grabbed it, put it into a lab, into a sandbox, and went off, and the company webpage comes up, and it's beautiful. It's got a picture of its headquarters with its name, and it's got every privacy policy and features and services and reviews. And I go out to the about the company, and it comes up with a beautiful page with all of its C-level officers. Here's the founder and CEO. Here's this, right? Here's their LinkedIn page, right? Here's their bio. And I go and me, because I don't trust anything. So I start looking into all of this, and it's all fabricated. It's all fabricated. I look at the HTML code and I find the AI tool, which is an available tool, right? Where you can go to, and with one or two lines, it will generate an entire web presence for you, right? Layers deep with everything that you need. And they had done that and pre-populated and put fake profiles, beautiful pictures, headshots, all AI generated, right? And they had tied it to
So
fake
how do you
accounts on LinkedIn.
how do you handle that? So
And
so
it was
you spent
beautiful. I was
well,
like,
Matthew,
I'm
you spent time
amazed.
doing that, right? So it took up your time. So that you got a little bit of, you didn't get phished, but you got denial of service a little bit for yourself. You wasted your time having to go spend it doing that. So
Well, I was doing the research. No, I knew it was fake. The way it worded my background and some of the things I was saying, they had used it out of context, just slightly, right? Because I'm sarcastic. I love being sarcastic. And the AI didn't understand the sarcasm in the text that it was pulling from and doing. So I knew it immediately, right? And as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, that cognitive. Oh, okay, urgency. Oh, okay, flattery. Oh, it's doing good. It's doing good. I was rooting for it. I really was. But I knew it was fake. But when it put the web page in there, I'm like, all right, it's probably 404 or whatever. And it went and it pulled up. I'm like, yes, this is awesome.
what would you say to people that maybe wouldn't catch that nuance, or like how do you navigate that, and without having to like spend tons of time researching every like random cold email you get? Like, what's the answer to that for people that don't have the time or even the experience?
You're screwed.
You heard it, everyone. All right. You're screwed.
The answer goes back to hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, right? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Don't believe what you see. A lot of people worry about, oh my gosh, the deep fakes and the audio that sounds like it and the video generation and everything. The world is going to come to an end. I'm a little more positive about it. The reality is we already live in a world of synthetic identities and fake media, right? If you pick up a magazine, let's say a fashion magazine, you go down to the store and pick one up, every image in there will be photoshopped. Every single image will be fake from that perspective. But do you throw a fit and go, this is all fake? No. You know it is. You accept it. You don't believe it. You know this model doesn't get up in the morning and look like that, right? So we cognitively accept certain margins because we are growing up in the age where this wasn't the case with video and sound. It's alarming to us. The generation after us that grows up in the environment where, yeah, all this is fake, they're gonna just by default.
Well, it's a little harder if it's like your
fake.
wife or your child, like calling you even with video, like, and then saying something happened to them in a hospital. Can you come here or go there? You know, get them to leave your house so they can go and like do a BME.
I had one of those,
like you can leave your house just to go to the hospital just so they could break into your house or something. Yeah.
I had one of those. Someone mimicked my daughter, saying that they were kidnapped and everything else. Now, again, security professional. I've got keywords. I've got multiple keywords.
Yeah, I've set that up with
and
yes,
safety words
same.
with
Yeah,
all my children. So, and they weren't able to provide that, and so I knew it, but I kept the ruse going on, just to see how long and see if I can get somebody to actually meet me face to face. But they were in Mexico. We ended up tracing it, and yeah. So those kinds of things have been around. That kind of fraud has been around, believe it or not, for a long time because attackers are creative. They really are. And so we have to up-level it. We know that the attackers' tools are getting better, so we have to include that into the corpus of knowledge and skepticism that should be part of our culture. Otherwise, we'll be an easy victim. So I think it's about training, it's about communication, it's about understanding what are the relevant risks, some of the things we should be looking for, and I think also understanding what are the cognitive weaknesses that they're going to target in us, right? And if anybody tries that, right, knowing that, and you know, we've done a crappy job in the last couple of generations in teaching critical thinking, right? Especially in schools. That's something you actually need, right? One of the cognitive biases is urgency, right? Buy now, limited time offer. These tactics have been used by sales and marketing forever, right? And anytime you hear that, you should think, caution, whoa, wait a second, I'm being manipulated. And if you read that in an email or a text, you should be thinking the same thing. That's part of the critical thinking around it that I think we do need to elevate and help people be more safe, not only at work, because that helps work and the enterprise, but also in their personal lives, and also as they teach their children to navigate this very dangerous digital global ecosystem that we're all connected to.
All right. No, that's absolutely, Howie, I say you're absolutely right. But in the meantime, actually, you're okay to go a little bit over, right?
Yeah. These are great conversations. So if you're willing to listen to me talk and blither on, let's do it.
Let's keep this going, because the alternative is going back to work. So
this is my work. This is what I love doing.
I guess just in terms of your fifth kind of prediction, in terms of like ransomware reinventing itself, can you maybe like elaborate on like what do you mean by that beyond, you know, your crypto locker that you can talk to now and it has a chat bot that can explain how to buy Bitcoins and why you should totally do this? Like, what is beyond that? Do you envision like active malware actually leveraging LLMs while it's running on different networks in order to like adjust its behaviors to become smart, like while it's embedded, as opposed to deterministic code or anything in between?
Yeah, what I really see, the ransomware, and we say ransomware, it's an umbrella term. It's really about digital extortion. Originally, it was about, okay, I'm going to encrypt things and deny, then I'm going to steal your data, and but really it's about getting the victim to pay, right? We are seeing a slow transformation where a lot of victims aren't paying anymore, even when it costs a lot more to recover than it would be to pay, which is a good thing. It's the only way we get rid of ransomware. But the ransomware attackers are not going to go quietly into the night, right? This is hugely beneficial to them, massive payoffs. This is, something that they're committed to because it's such a good return. They are going to now use these AI tools to help put pressure on the victims. So right now we get multimodal kind of or multi-tiered ransomware or extortion, where I come into your environment, I steal your data, maybe I cripple your systems, but I have your data, and if you don't give it to me, I'm going to threaten to sell it on the black market. I'm going to threaten to publish it, right? So everybody sees your secrets. Okay, no, please don't do that. We need to. Okay, great. Now, when they're faced with no, I'm still not going to pay you, they're going to start using AI to dive into that data. Because right now, they're just looking at it as just a block of data. They don't care what it is, right? As long as I get paid for it. But if you're not going to pay me for it, now I'm going to use those LLMs. I'm going to use AI to see what are your dirty little secrets? What connections and tokens and security access do you have with your partners and customers? Right? Can I contact them? Can I use your data to hack into them and have
or
it point
potentially
back to you? Can I, look at all these
have you
things?
done anything illegal? While I scanned all your emails, scanned all your Slack messages. This conversation here is a violation of X, Y, and Z, and it would be a real shame if I just turned you to the FTC or the FBI, and now you can't contact them because you really don't want this out, and now you're definitely going to.
And we've seen two different approaches to that particular one. One, we've seen just recently last year, and I think it was Q3 or Q4, where they basically told the company, hey, you didn't report this, the fact that we hacked you, you didn't report this to the authorities within the timeline you're supposed to, right? Which means you're breaking regulations. We're going to report you to the authorities. That was one. The other one, which actually predates that, is we've had attackers come in and specifically go to individual executives and go, hey, we have your email and we know you're having an affair. We know you're doing this. We know you're doing that. So you need to have the company pay us. Otherwise, we're going to contact your wife. We're going to put this to the newspapers. We're going to do that. So it was a very narrow case where they went to one or two executives specifically in the decision cycle and said, I've got some dirt specifically on you. And it was limited. Typically, it was because of emails or something like that. But I think there is a much wider range of very specific data. And one of the worries is, hey, we're going to grab your source code, right? We're going to tear it apart. We're going to find vulnerabilities in it now. We're going to give it to our vulnerabilities teams, right? They're going to find vulnerabilities before you release it. We're going to make sure that your next product craters within the first week, everything you've invested and your reputation, right? So and that's one of a dozen different things.
So to summarize it, it's AI is allowed to actually process all the ransom data in a way that allows you to do more extortion and blackmail, basically the category of blackmail attacks.
Yes, because you'll understand the meaning within the data. Instead of it just being a block of this is bits and bytes, right? This is 8 terabytes of data, right? You'll actually be able to go in and tear it apart. And that's one of the things that AI can do very, very well. So, yes. And how would you like as an attacker to train your AI system to go, I want you to be able to take a massive bulk of data, find me illegal activities, find me things that motivate, for extortion, personal motivation, financial motivation, whatever. Map those against regulations, map those against criminal penalties, right? And give
this
me
actually connects really well. This connects really well with another thing I want
to
talk to you about or ask, like, if you agree. You mentioned something about the privacy community getting together and organizing against like the worst, like data miners that are like kind of like harvesting all this data. I'm just thinking, like, from the point of view of like frontier labs and how much data they're going to be collecting on organizations, all this private stuff that you're saying that could get used for blackmail. Like AI labs are collecting and hoarding this information, and they say like, oh, it's all private and stored locally or whatever they do. But if they get hacked, and then now they access all this blackmail on organizations and employees and emails and all this kind of stuff, that might be a kind of a weird new attack vector where it's like you didn't get compromised, but your AI provider did, and now you're getting emails about blackmail. And I kind of wanted to also just talk a little bit about the privacy angle in general. I kind of view privacy is having like a huge problem. It's already having a huge problem, but it's going to get even worse with AI kind of being local. You know, you have Copilot, like you have so many different AI systems running locally to you that I don't see how you have any privacy anymore. You know, all these kind of traditional things of like end-to-end encryption. Well, that doesn't matter if you and I both have an agent that's like sees our unencrypted messages on local on our device. You know, so when you put that all together, you know, the complete loss of privacy, and maybe in businesses, people never had the expectation of privacy in the corporate world, but maybe personally you do. So that's a huge problem for personal use cases. But in the corporate world, it's like, yeah, all this data is going to get fed to AI. If that ever gets compromised, it can be used in these kind of blackmail attacks. And like, how do you navigate that? Like, I don't even know what to do with it right now.
So it's a great question. And first off, we have to say privacy is not dead. I do get asked, right? Is privacy dead? You know, I don't hear much. No, privacy is not dead. It's very well and mature. In fact, when you look at some of the AI regulation that's going on, like in Europe and so forth, a lot of it is actually tied to privacy. So privacy is more mature and respected now than it ever has been. But everything that you said, right? The exposure of data, the aggregation of data, and especially the interpretation of data that's considered, you know, kind of unclassified or unorganized, right? Data, turning that into something meaningful is all something that AI is doing. So yes, a lot more data is at risk and a lot more data is being generated. And that will continue to go up in the petabytes, exabyte ranges every year. The overall challenge we're talking about, though, more data, more access, more processing, leading to greater levels of exposure. We've seen this before, right? These challenges, just like in other aspects of security or trust, this isn't new. So when you go back to the creation of the cloud era, right, where before everybody had their own data centers, right? It was behind your DMZ, and you know you had this. It was your secure environment. You had control, and all of a sudden, these public cloud environments that you can go on their machines and their storage, S3, whatever, put your data. Everybody was worried. Hey, that's gonna, you know, our secrets are gonna get out. Our confidential data, our privacy is gonna get out. The industry responded, well, we're going to put more controls, and the benefits exceed the believed risk, right? And cloud grew, and cloud continues to grow. And many companies don't have their own data centers. They don't. Everything's out on the cloud. So you're trusting those cloud providers to protect that data. So yeah, the system kind of adapts. Cloud security has gotten better. Whole bunch of third-party tools have gotten better, and we have accepted the risk based upon the benefits that it provides to go, well, okay, yeah, right? So every app on your phone is connected.
You forgot another buzzword, which is edge compute or serverless. You know, well, we're on-prem,
which is just a closer cloud. Is all it is. It's still not your device. It's someone else's servers.
Yeah, we're running on an on-prem serverless cloud.
CDN networks, sure.
Mix it all together.
It's still not your device. You know, no matter what it is, it's still electrons moving, gates opening and closing. You know, but it's just not your device. So yes, we are going to see that. But again, the industry will slowly adapt, and we will start putting in governance and rules, expectations, better security, better privacy, better practices. But just like in the early days of cloud, right? It was Wild West for the attackers that wanted to grab data because it was so easy, so easy. So those risks do go up, and the industry has to adapt to those. We have to adapt to them because of, you know, LLMs, definitely because of agentic systems. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. We don't even know where this is going to go. And what happens when I come out with a solution, an agentic security agent just for you, Alex, for you to run that to watch a whole bunch of the other agents? Oh, that sounds great. Until it gets hacked. Now it has all the access and it can impersonate you, right? Because that's what you would need it to do. So it just gets more complex. The same problems we, revisit, and we have to adapt because they're different. But at the core, in many cases, we've seen this before. So, but it's not easy, and there's no guarantee we will be able to address it, though.
And do you think governments and legislators are best suited to solve these kinds of problems in the current day and age? As an example, on the subject of privacy specifically, since we talked about this, age verification laws that are kind of appearing in Europe, in Australia. It's coming to the West, to North America as well, where it's like, well, we need to protect the children from X. Well, how do we know who is a child? Well, they need to provide ID. Okay, so that means you have to collect everyone's IDs now. And now, so now there is no privacy anymore because you need to provide a 3D scan of your face to use a social network. And now, ultimately, privacy is dead in that sense if these laws are enacted. These laws are enacted ultimately not to protect the children. It is literally to have everyone's 3D face scan for any single service. Like, what do you think about that? Because we are in a kind of like, our second business is in the privacy industry, and we've been at it for a while. And I kind of think that we are privacy is not very alive. And if these laws do get passed and actually enacted, it's
on life
not
support.
looking good.
It's on life support. I would say it's on life support.
Yeah.
I won't say it's dead. I would say it's getting more complex, more challenging, and we have to be more savvy. I will say very clearly that governments, regulations, laws, regulators are horrible, absolutely horrible at putting controls because it takes so long. They're not consistent. They create confusion. And often they're not the experts in understanding what are the second and third order effects. What are you giving up? Right? Is often not being explored. So we do have regulations, and let's pick privacy, right? Here in the US, we have 50 states, right? Unless you want to count our northern brothers and people in Greenland, But we've got over 50 different privacy laws, right? Or laws for 50, because we've got laws in territories, US territories as well. There's no consistency. There's no consistency on biometrics when it comes to privacy. There's no consistency on who actually has privacy as a right. California is one of the first states, actually, where you had a right to. It was in the California Constitution, right? So now we've got, I think, 18 different states that it's in their constitution. But every state's different. The rights for privacy for children versus adults versus online versus cookies versus health. There are variations. So, and it's taken decades just to get to that point. So it is the lag for regulators is horribly delayed, and it can't keep up with the innovation of technology. So I see regulations is that last safety net. We have to be much more proactive. And other regions are so, right? When you look at Singapore, when you look at EU, heck, when you look at China, right? When China has a better grasp on privacy than we do, talk about a nation that is just all about government surveillance. And yet they have clear laws that govern the non-Chinese controlled companies, right? Or governments. But they have clear privacy laws. If, again, you don't look at what the government does, right? Or the companies that they control, that benefit their people. So, yeah, I do not have a whole lot of faith. I see it as the safety net. And unfortunately, it's a minimum standard that's so variable that it's very difficult for it to be effective. I appreciate it, but I don't rely upon it to lead privacy, security, safety, or trust in the global digital ecosystem.
Actually, you've touched upon kind of authoritarian regimes and kind of state actors, like these tools in the hands of authoritarian regimes, because ultimately they're not bound by any law ultimately, because they make laws with a stroke of a pen and no vote, right? So anything is allowed, and all this stuff is happening behind closed doors. Even the Chinese models that you see are like rivaling the Western ones. The ones that are released open source, those are extremely impressive, but they obviously have stuff that is much better, that is not going to see the light of day ever, and they're doing some really, really shady things with these tools, and they're at a significant advantage, right? How do we, how do organizations, especially in the West, who could be on the receiving end of those tools, is there ultimately any hope? Because you're going to use a guarded commercial tool that is offered by a Western company, but the attacker is running a bleeding edge Chinese model that's running on a supercomputer that's powered by 40,000 work camps and 40,000 people on bicycles generating power because they don't care. Anything is allowed. Like, how do you compete against this?
So first off, you have to get your head around it at a strategic perspective, right? We consider nation states the absolute top tier when we look at threat agent archetypes. These are nations that can literally throw tens or hundreds of billions of dollars into research and development to identify vulnerabilities, to build exploits, to combine human intelligence and human assets with digital attacks and everything else, right? So they are top tier. Now, even before AI, if they wanted to hack your system, they could, right? Even before digital technology, even before the internet, if they really were focused on getting in your environment, they could. So we do first have to understand we are not looking for 100% protection from them. It never has been the case. However, we do want a certain amount of protection. And number one, following the basic guidelines gets you pretty far, right? But working with your peers, working with government agencies that are hopefully continue to be funded, right, to help understand what are the tactics, how can we help either discourage or prevent or rapidly detect. And if we can do that, now we can start to understand how do we contain and how do we recover, giving us an element of resilience, even against these things. And again, the conversation we had, okay, let's embed cybersecurity into good designs. That also helps because it consumes a lot more time and resources, and there are finite, right, on the attacker's side if they want to target you and everybody else. So make the environment more difficult for them, make your environment better prepared, right, from a prevention and a response capability. And as we work together and share information and pool that, we get, as an entire ecosystem, we up-level our defenses.
Oh, definitely. I want to give a counterpoint to that. Like, yeah, no, I think those are all like kind of sound ways to approach it. But I was watching something. This is pre-AI. There's a presentation from a military leader. I forget his name, and he was doing a presentation about the common types of cyber attacks the U.S. Navy, or it could be the Air Force, was seeing coming from nation states. And they admitted, this was like pre the latest models right now, I think it was like a year ago or so, they admitted that there's, I think, like 3 out of the 8 attacks that they identified, they can't get out of their system. They can't prove that it's out of the system. That's what they said themselves. So this is like on nation state.
It's very difficult. When you start getting down into the digital forensics, it can be hugely difficult. So I can talk about to a limited extent. So, and this was even 10 years ago, where there was a piece of malware, and it was a beautiful piece of malware because what it did is it infected the system, went in and rewrote the EPROMs, right? So it could be persistent even when you ripped out the hard drive, threw it away, slapped in a new hard drive, installed a new OS and everything else. It would reinfect that from the EPROMs. And there was, I know of one variant that was doing it from an EPROM on the motherboard, and I know of another one that was doing it from the EPROMs on the video cards. And that was more of a specific attack. But again, you could toss the entire motherboard. You could reflash the BIOS on the motherboard and it would still be persistent. So we saw that, right? And this is before AI. And the attackers doing that, mind-boggling amount of resources to be able to do that, right? My favorite ransomware attack, and this is back in the old days, right, where they just tried to lock up your data. My very favorite ransomware attack succeeded against a target that had backups in Iron Mountain. Taped cold storage backups in Iron Mountain. They were able to undermine those. And it was one of the most ingenious attacks I've ever seen in my life, and it was beautiful. I mean, elegant. Okay. So at a high level. And I wasn't consulting to this company. It wasn't a company I was working for, but us as security folks, we talk. We talk and share because you always want to be aware, right? That's part of the communication and elevating your environment. So the target company, right, had a master database where all their transactions went through, and this was the core of their business. The attacker gained access and essentially put a shim in between or right in front of that database, the IO of that database, okay? And that shim, what it did is it applied encryption to the data going into the database. And when the data came out of the database, it would decrypt it, right, and allow it to come out. So in using the system, it was a little bit slower, right? But data went in, data came out, no problem. They left this shim in place, right? So they had backups. They had backups for 90 days. Guess how long the shim was in place? 91 days. 91 days, that key, that decryption key, right, and function was turned off. And they were sent a message, we've encrypted your database. And it was encrypted. And they're like, no problem. We're going to go grab yesterday's backup tapes and reinstalled encrypted. Okay, we're going to go back last week. We have those, right? Iron Mountain hasn't come to pick them up, right? Because they pick them up in these trucks. And they put it in. They're like, it's encrypted. Okay. We have Iron Mountain, right? Put the request in. They'll FedEx or secure transport in, within 36 hours or whatever it was out of their vaults, right? The tapes, the cold tapes, and we will restore them. And they restored it, and it was encrypted. And they're like, and the industry kept it very, very quiet. Obviously, we weren't out there throwing it out in the media and trying to create panic or anything, but we were communicating amongst the CISOs and the security leadership going, we have to worry about this. And by the way, start looking at your key databases and systems and so forth. Start looking at shims, start looking at changes in your environment that may lead to things.
Restore from backup. You should have ran like a restore from backup, like on some cadence, and would have found it, I guess, a little earlier. But that's a really interesting attack. I wonder like how sophisticated it was, because like if you have like massive volumes of data, an encryption key can't be used forever. Like there's like a weakness to encryption keys. Like they actually stop being effective, and you can actually start being able to break the encryption when the data size is large and you use the same key. I'm curious what like kind of command and control they use to like update the keys and manage them, because like large amounts of data. They didn't.
So they didn't. It was a static, strong key, and it was a streaming cipher. I probably shouldn't get into all the details, but it was because the intent was nobody questioned it because nobody knew it was there. So the streaming cipher, you have a strong streaming cipher, and all you do at the right time is you simply delete that cipher. You already have the key in your possession as the attacker, so you just have the software delete it. It's gone, right? And now all that information is there. And yeah, maybe with a strong cipher, you could decipher it in a year or two. Maybe. But guess what? That company wouldn't be around in a year or two. It didn't matter. There are business conditions that limit that. And now you can start calculating the cost, right? And that then becomes that justification. What do you want to do here, right? Do you want to pay me? Do you want this? Do you want that? So, there are other considerations of, is it technically possible versus should we do it? And if you're a technologist, you never see the other part of that question. It's always, oh, is it technically possible? No, there's also a follow-on, should we do this? Right? Just like your privacy question. Hey, is it technically possible to vet everybody that goes into social media to see if they're over 18? Technically, it's technically possible. Should we do it? No. Right? You're undermining and categorizing everybody, and can it be used for genocide attacks? Yeah, sure can. During World War II, with this little, this country and the aggressor in Europe, would they have liked that capability? Yeah, they actually tried to figure out who was in a certain race, class, or background, or family. Or
yeah, I think there's just like a common story where I think it was in the Netherlands who they were doing like surveys and kind of like censuses, like, hey, we want to know like the ethnics of the different people. Like it was for the good and stuff, so we can like help and do nice things. And then those lists were created, and then those lists went into the hands of some nice people circa 1930s. And they're like, oh, that's a very nice data set that you have here. It's exactly what we wanted for.
That's a very nice data set. We know which doors to knock on. And a lot of people think back, and you got to look in the history, right? They think, oh, this came on all of a sudden. Whereas, and it was illegal. Oh my gosh, it was unethical. Actually, a lot of the programs leading up to World War II to identify certain races and so forth were passed through the legislature, right? If you were from a certain nationality and you ran a business, the government wrote a law that said, oh, you had to put a certain sign on your window. And so you had police and authorities come by going, hey, we're just here to enforce the law. You are not compliant with the law. You have to do that. And a few years later, it was that helped them identify the crowds to firebomb those establishments, and very dark kind of secret police coming in the middle of the night and taking people. And it was, in that point, it wasn't even in the middle of the night. It was right during the day, right? So you can even have it legal, and the question should still be asked, should we be doing this? Is it possible? Yes. And in fact, it might even be legal. Yes. But should we be doing it? What are the second and third and fourth order consequences? We need to be teaching people that. Oh, wait, let's not teach critical.
I think that's the stance of a lot of people with AI as well. There's a lot of, I think there's a common like mentality of like, hey, this whole AI thing, like, should we be doing this? Like, or should we be doing AI at all? And like, I think the answer to that is like, I don't think we have a choice, because if we don't, the bad actors will. Like that's then a weird catch-22 we're in, because like for some use cases in some areas you can think, same question, right? Like, should we even been doing AI for this? And I think for some of it the answer should be no, but I don't think that's like feasible just in the reality that we're in.
My personal opinion, I believe what you just said, right? Our adversaries and the bad guys are going to use it, so that's justification enough. But that isn't the number one reason. And for me, I want this stuff. I love digital technology. I love the way it helps and evolves society. I love the potential benefits for all of us and for our children and future generations and for mankind. I want this stuff, but I'm a pragmatist. I understand that this technology inherently is accompanied by an equitable level of risk. So we better get our heads around it so that we can manage that risk as we rush forward and embrace it. Because I do want to rush forward and embrace it. I love AI. I love the potential of what it can do. But let's also talk ahead of time and not be surprised and victimized by it, so that we can manage that risk. We won't eliminate it. We know that. That isn't the goal. But we do want to manage it to an acceptable level, which means we have to be well informed. We have to understand that. We have to work with each other to figure out, okay, what it is. And there may be guardrails. There should be guardrails, right? But let's think about those ahead of time and understand the trade-offs, right? But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, much like any other tool that was invented by humans ever, it's like, oh yeah, when the first firearm was created, it's like, hey, this is a device I can make bad people go away from a distance. pretty sweet fucking thing. But bad people can use that device to make you go away from a distance too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think, Alex, I think we should probably be wrapping this up unless you have some more questions that you wanted to ask.
No, I think we should wrap up, but maybe like as a takeaway, like a final thought, I guess. The audience is like, we're trying to gain actionable insights for people, especially in the security leadership space, like CISOs and anyone else listening. What's the final word? I guess your final prediction, I think number 10 in that list, which we'll definitely share in the link. So the CISO role transforms. Maybe as a final thing, like give the final prediction of how the CISO role will transform, and what these thought leaders and security leaders should be doing to like navigate all this.
Ideally in the next, what they should be doing, literally tomorrow and
this year,
in the next 90 days. Yeah.
Okay. So, the last prediction is really around the transformation of the CISO. And we talked about a lot of reasons for that. CISOs need to evolve to expand from that technology expert, right, about technical risk, to really be able to communicate at the level of business value, right? What are the risks around those business value? Because you have to communicate it in business terms. And also looking forward to say, how can cybersecurity help contribute to the bottom line, right? And AI is going to be one of those topics that will separate the wheat from the chaff. The CISOs that will survive versus the CISOs that will be replaced. The CISOs that will be replaced are the ones that are going, AI is too much of a risk, time out, none of it. Let's figure out all the security first. You don't get to play with AI. They'll be gone because AI is a competitive business advantage. Companies are going to need to embrace it. The surviving CISOs will be going, yes, let's move fast. And I'm going to work with those teams that are bringing or developing AI. I'm going to help embed those guardrails, and I'm going to show how that's a business value. It's a business advantage. And we're going to work in partnership. So I'm going to speak the language of the business, right? I'm not the office of no. I'm your partner to help you go faster. So I want AI, and I'm going to help you bring in AI, and I'm going to help shield against the bad things, and I'm going to help you be even more competitive against our competitors because you're going to have better AI. Okay, those are the CISOs that are going to win. A lot of CISOs don't have that.
You're kind of shifting the perspective from like getting the board and CEOs kind of from looking at it as a cost center to saying, hey, let's lean into this, make it a revenue center in some ways, and then use some of that to up our security. Yeah.
You have to. That's the only path of survival. And that's part of the transformation of what CISOs need to be. You can't keep coming in with fear and going, hey, I'm protecting against something that might or might not happen, and give me 20% more budget every year. Because that's typically what CISOs ask for, year over year, 20% increase. They don't get that, right? But eventually, that adds up quick, right? And for every dollar you spend on security, that means you're not spending it on getting new customers, on developing new products, on generating new revenue or sales. So you eventually become a detriment. So that tension is there, and there will be a cap. And we're seeing some security professionals going, yeah, I've kind of been capped, right? I need 20% just to keep pace, and I'm getting 1 or 2% maybe.
Yeah, no, especially, and it's
and eventually
real
that's a
easy
downward
to
spiral.
use those budgets now, because before you had to okay, give me a bigger budget. Okay, I'm going to go hire more people. I'm going to onboard them. I'm going to train them. Now you just spawn more parallel agents, and you could be burning $1,000 per second on tokens easily. Oh, you want to burn more money? Not a problem. So it's really easy to spend this money. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's easy, right? Easy to spend.
But do you think it's kind of like we originally started with here's the IT guy. The IT guy does everything, right? He runs the network, does the security, everything. Then we had this specialization where all these roles, there's new acronyms popping up, and then each role is a department, right? That is now growing, right? Do you think there's going to eventually there will be an extreme contraction of these departments where a CISO no longer heads a department? They are the department, and they are augmented by hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of these agents that they basically puppeteer as a single individual.
So I think the successful CISO of the future won't be dependent on so many headcount resources. They will be using these tools. AI is a tool. It's one of many that we use. We will be embracing it. We will also be using AI as part of the other tools that we already embrace, right? So it's not just, oh, it's an AI tool. This is a force multiplier for things that we already do. So yes, we will be doing that. But I believe that a cybersecurity department should have never been just a standalone, isolated group. Cybersecurity is about expertise, right? In defining policy, setting up guardrails, seeing future risks, responding to bad things that happen. You have a certain set of skills and expertise. Security itself actually manifests through the employees, the system, the infrastructure of the company. So it's really about extending out the desires, right? Those policies and guidelines and structures and behaviors that cybersecurity is saying is important, getting that permeated across the organization, which requires partnership. It requires insights, and it requires a level of trust between the other C-suite members who own all these different, right, environments. If they're like, nah, we don't want security, we don't want to call them, they're the office of no, yeah, go ahead and take the training, but if you need to go around security policy to get the deadline, then do it, right? If that's the relationship you have, you don't have much security. Security is optional. Security is then a convenience, right? Versus embedded into the culture, embedded into the business processes, and embedded in to the financial success of these enterprises. You have to get to that point. It's not just a standalone IT security department. It isn't. And that's why often it fails under IT, right? And that's why we've pulled out in many cases and created a separate C-suite officer, the CISO, right, and pulled them out. Because when you put them under legal, or you put them under IT, or you put them under a product, they are hobbled to an extent that they aren't very effective over time.
I think great advice. Yeah, really enjoyed our chat today. Yeah, thank you for joining us, and we'll post your full 10 prediction article in the description below. I think it's a great article, great read. Really appreciate it, and maybe we can circle back and see how many of them came true next year.
I would love it. I would love it. Absolutely. So I want a brutal grading every year. I want brutal gradings of my previous year's predictions. So that's how we get better.
Yep, that's the only way. All right. Well, thank you, Matthew. This has been quite excellent. I know we can go for hours, but this is not the Lex Friedman podcast. So I think, yeah, we'll just end it here. Yeah. Thank you for your time. And let me just stop the recording.